I've always thought Piss Christ was a sleeping giant, and it hasn't been awakened in many years. In America, they don't show it, and so there's no controversy there. Piss Christ has been attacked in, in Europe and in Australia, and attacked in Congress in 1989. But after that, Piss Christ has not shown its face in America, really, barely. And so it'd be interesting to see how Piss Christ does on Twitter and in the real world. My name is Andres Serrano, and I'm an artist born in New York City. Been in New York City all my life. I'm a real New Yorker. When I was about 8 years old, I went to religious instruction, meaning it was only 1 hour or 2 hours a day, once a week, to prepare for Holy Communion. And so I made my communion. A couple of years later, at the age of 12, I believe, I made my confirmation. I remember at the time when I made my confirmation, the nuns who taught the religious instruction, the nuns said, once you're confirmed, it means you become a soldier of God. So after the age of 13, I stopped going to church, but I have always remained a soldier of God. I had worked in an advertising agency in the 70s, early in maybe 70, 71. I think the most important thing I got from working in advertising is learning the power of images and also how to use words to convey feelings, to sell products, and to sell ideas. And so, that's when I realized that the soundbite, the thing that you read, the few words you read in an ad, they should catch your attention and stay with you and sound good and sell you something. And so I've always used that experience in advertising, for instance, for my titles. And my titles are very precise and very, they're often very literal. It's what it is. But at the same time, they could be double-edged, as it is with Piss Christ. My early work is what I consider tableau photography. There's a person or a subject, there's a background, and so I started doing scenes, and that was to make fake paintings or to make images that look like paintings but were photographs. And so that's where the bodily fluid started. They were the first ones. And the first bodily fluid image is called milk blood. It's a red square next to a white square. And there are two tanks filled with blood, and one with blood, one with milk. And they refer to Mondrian, So that is my first bodily fluid image. And then I continued making images that were abstract using bodily fluids. And eventually, I did a monochrome called blood, or a monochrome called milk, a monochrome called piss. And then at some point, and then I started to mix, the different fluids together. But then at some point, a few months later, I decided to do what someone later termed the immersions, meaning I put an object into a tank. And the first immersion that I made was Piss Christ, which is a crucifix immersed in a tank full of urine. Piss Christ, for me, was an extension of earlier work. When I was doing the tableau setups, I did a few religious pieces, one called the Rabble. It's a crucifix with a small mountain of chicken claws reaching up to Christ. I did some other images that related or used Christ. And so when I did the Piss Christ, it was a matter of combining the representation aspect of my work with the abstract fluid images. And so when I put a cross into the urine, it was just an extension of the religious work that I had been doing before the fluids. And the title, people have said it's the title that's most offensive. The title is, it was piss, it was a cross, Christ, so I had no choice but to call it Piss Christ. I thought nothing that it was offensive, I thought nothing that it was blasphemous, and I thought nothing that anyone would notice it. So for me, it was just a natural progression of the work. It was something that happened as a result of everything else that had happened before. And so all roads came together in Piss Christ. And now, the image existed for a while. I showed it in a couple of shows. And then Marsha Tucker, who was the director of the new museum, she nominated for an award called Awards in the Visual Arts. These were awards that were handed out to 10 people regionally around the country from different sections. And so she nominated me for an award, and I was very surprised when I got the call saying that I had won. And I was so incredulous because I'm completely unknown. And I had to say, I said, is this the award that Ross Bleckner got last year? And they said, yes. Along with the award, which was $15,000, there was an exhibition that would travel, and then people, they were, you submitted the 10 slides. I had submitted 10 slides to get the award, to win the award. So the 10 images that I had submitted, I gave them those images to, show in the Awards in the Visual Arts exhibition. Now, no one thought anything of it until the exhibition went to the LA Museum, it went to Carnegie Mellon, and then it went to the Virginia Museum, the last stop. Now, no one thought anything of Piss Christ hanging on the walls of these museums. But then I remember, I think it happened when there was a small group of people that I was talking to, a tour of my work with this small group. Shortly after that, someone wrote a letter to the editor, the Richmond News, and it was a small little item like this, just a letter to the editor, saying they had been offended because they saw this picture called Piss Christ, it's in a museum, and taxpayers funded the exhibition. And as a result of that little letter to the editor, this man named Donald Wildman, the Reverend Donald Wildman, who was the head of the American Family Association, a very Christian right-wing fundamentalist organization, he saw it and he decided to mount a campaign against Piss Christ. And he sent out a letter to 178,000 members of his church and churches, affiliates, urging them to write to Congress and to the Senate to deplore the use of taxpayers' money in this way. So this happened in April of 1989, and by May of 1989, I get, or Congress and the Senate, they get so many letters that I was denounced on the Senate floor by Jesse Helms, Alphonse D'Amato. Senator Jesse Helms got up on the Senate and said, Andres Serrano is not an artist, he's a jerk who's taunting the American people. I was very flattered by that because here I am, an unknown artist, standing in front of the American people, taunting them. It was quite an honor. And immediately, they also organized and signed a petition of 25 senators who sent a letter of protest to the National Endowment for the Arts, criticizing the fact that I had gotten money from the National Endowment for the Arts. Now, I didn't get a $15,000 award or grant from the National Endowment because the budget for the Awards in the Visual Arts was 1/3 money came from the NEA, 1/3 from the Equitable Life Assurance, and 1/3 from the Rockefeller Foundation. So really, we're talking about, it was technically $5,000 of the taxpayers' money. or the NEA's money. So the NEA, instead of doing what I was prepared to do, which is to defend myself and say, you know, you got me wrong, I'm not that blasphemous guy you think I am. The NEA got very defensive, apologetic, and so when the senators and these right-wing Republican politicians saw that, they went after the NEA, and eventually they dismantled the NEA and made sure that they would not be able to fund artists directly, but indirectly, and they would make sure that no controversial art would ever be funded again. But, you know, while I was being denounced in Congress in May of 1989, 3 weeks later, the Corcoran Museum in Washington, D.C. was about to open the Robert Mapplethorpe show, This Perfect Moment, I believe it's called. And because of the flack that I was getting in Congress, the Corcoran canceled the show. And when they did that, everything blew up, and you know, a battle became later known as the Cultural Wars. Because when I was, you know, being denounced in Congress, being an unknown, nobody cared. But when they put Mapplethorpe in there with me, and Serrano Mapplethorpe controversy grew, then the whole art world, and not only that, the media, everyone went crazy. And so that's how the controversy happened. But for me, as I said earlier, I was not trying to provoke, I was just trying to do my work as an artist and as a Christian. But I'm the kind of Christian that I don't need to talk about my religion, and I prefer not to. And even though I've long defended myself as a Christian artist who's not trying to be blasphemous with piss Christ, I realize that the people who attack it, they have their own agenda, they don't care. And so I don't even bother defending it anymore. What happened to me at that time was I was getting a lot of flack and feeling heat, and, you know, being criticized and being denounced in the press. So I told my dealer at the time, Stephen Stux of Stux Gallery, I said, listen, Stephen, I feel the heat. I feel like I have to prove myself as an artist. I need a new show. And he said to me, Andre, frankly, we lost money on your last show. We only sold one piece, and that was to an artist collector in the gallery. So I can't afford to give you another show. And so he advised me to look for another gallery. So this was in the summer of 1989. So I started looking around for a couple of galleries. Finally, 3 weeks after he told me he couldn't give me a show, he left a message on my answering machine, and he said, Andre, listen, I've reconsidered, and I think you should have the show, you know, and you should have a show, and we'll schedule one for December. Now, I've heard more than one person say to me that they spoke to Stux and said, listen, what are you, crazy? This guy is front page news. How could you not give him a show? And so that show in December, you know, turned everything around with my career. I got the best review of my life in the New York Times, and I sold a lot of work because of it. So that's, you know, how I came to become, you know, a better known artist than I was before Piss Christ. I always say that my work is a thread, you know, it starts here and it continues, and one thing leads to another. And now, the robots came from Infamous, it also came from the game, All Things Trump, meaning looking to the past to repurpose objects from the past and, you know, bring them and put them in another context. Now, the inspiration for the robots was crypto art, particularly the metaverse as well. And what I saw is, you know, I didn't understand a lot of crypto art, particularly the Bored Apes, the crypto punks. What I didn't understand about them is why people would spend a lot of money for this stuff. Because they didn't have any depth. They didn't have anything of what I consider traditional aesthetic values. Where culture and art is concerned, it seems like a more distant thing. It's not an object you display or for others to see. It's a very private thing that exists for you to see, to share, very internal. It's a world that I don't know, you know. However, I want to know it better. And I'm going to tell you something that really hasn't been announced publicly, officially, but we're making an NFT of Piss Christ. And it will come out at the Miami Art Basel Fair. Christie's is doing a new digital gallery at the fair. And Piss Christ will be one of, I think, 6 images, 6 pictures that will be there. And so I'm very anxious to see how Piss Christ does on Twitter, actually. I would like for Piss Christ to be promoted on Twitter, because that's a whole nother universe. That's a crazy universe. And so I've always thought Piss Christ was a sleeping giant, and it hasn't been awakened in many years. In America, they don't show it, and so there's no controversy there. Piss Christ has been attacked in, in Europe and in Australia, and attacked in Congress in 1989. But after that, Piss Christ has not shown its face in America, really, barely. And so it'd be interesting to see how Piss Christ does on Twitter and in the real world.